Hi readers! Don't forget to download your free copy of the 2022 Spring Reading Guide. We've selected the best new releases this season and organized them into categories in the guide so you can head straight to your favorite section if you prefer. We also have one category that's dedicated to the minimalist reader, and our minimalist reads list has a handful of books that we highly recommend if you're only planning to pick up a few reads this spring. In the guide, you'll also find some fun recipes, things to do at home, and tips to improve your reading life. So download your free guide and see the books that made the list over at bibliolifestyle.com. That's your free copy of the 2022 Spring Reading Guide that you can download right now over at bibliolifestyle.com. I've also included a link in the show notes so you can sign up there. Happy spring reading! Welcome to The Reader's Couch, a podcast that brings you lively conversations with some of your favorite authors and bookish personalities. Over here, the couch is always booked, but I've moved some books to the side table and fluffed some cushions so I can welcome a guest or two to come lounge with us. Today on the couch, we have Rebekah Iliff, and she's here to talk to me about her new book, Champagne for One. A charming book filled with vulnerability and humor that's all about embracing solitude. Stay tuned. Hi readers, welcome again to The Reader's Couch. I'm your host, Victoria Wood, and here on the couch with me is Rebekah Iliff, and she's here to talk to me about her new book, Champagne for One, a celebration of solitude. Please welcome to the couch, Rebekah Iliff. Hey Rebekah.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled we could have you here on the couch. I'm super excited about your book. I can't even begin to tell you. I think this is a topic we're going to be talking about for days, months, weeks, years ahead. I think it's so important. So I'm just thrilled you were able to carve some time out.
Well, I appreciate that. And let's hope it's for years to come, because the publisher will certainly be grateful for that, as will I. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about all the different various aspects of this.
Absolutely. So your book, Champagne for One, is now out there in the world. Readers can get their hands on a copy. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling? How excited are you?
I'm feeling good. The response has been really positive. And I think I'm fortunate as a first-time author. Of course, I've been writing for many years. It's all been essay-based. So these kind of quick things go out in the world and you get these spikes and then it kind of goes away. But so it was a little nerve-wracking, obviously, but I've been so appreciative. I've gotten so much support from, beyond just my mom's group of 5 friends who, you can always count on them to buy a book, but it seems to be a topic that people are responsive to. And yeah, and of course, Collective Book Studio is my publisher and they've done a great job. And my illustrator, Holly Mayer, has been great as well in terms of promoting. And so, yeah, so far so good.
Yay, I'm excited to hear that. But I want readers to hear straight from you, Rebekah. Tell us about your book, Champagne for One, and what can readers expect going in?
So I think the intention of the book is kind of threefold. The first was really this idea of honoring particularly women who have taught me to stand on my own 2 feet and how to be independent-minded and think for myself, but also how to be in relationship with others in a healthy way. The second intention was really to reframe this concept of solitude that doesn't really get talked about. I think we live in a world, particularly right now, where it's all about connection, inclusion, relationships. And if you're not in a relationship or a romantic relationship, then there's something wrong with you. And so we just kind of get these messages. And also we have so much coming at us all the time. Everyone's kind of this cult of busy. So just reframing solitude as something that's a really necessary part of the human experience. And then the third is really to spark ideas for how to get alone time and solitude in manageable, easily accessible ways. Not all of us can traipse off to India or to a Mexican sweat lodge for, a month of eat, pray, love style vacationing. And so the idea is to kind of give people a permission slip to say, yeah, I'm going to take 20 minutes a day to go for a walk or to go to yoga or find something else that I really enjoy doing by myself. And this is a necessary part of my life so that I can give to my family, to my friends, to my work. And then obviously as a humor writer, I want people to laugh a little and to feel light about it. I mean, this is a tough topic, I think, particularly coming out of 2 years where many people have felt isolated and we have this kind of surge of mental health issues going on. And that's obviously very serious. And there's some seriousness in there too, but just to bring some levity and fun to this idea of solitude.
Well, I think, in my opinion, you did a great job. You achieved that plus more. But the thing that really caught my attention after just turning the first few pages was the introduction, and you opening with one of my personal favorites, Ralph Waldo Emerson, about guarding well your spare moments. I think the idea of solitude and being alone during our spare moments, it's scary for some folks. I think as I've aged, I've come to value those alone moments. I'm not in a rush to be doing something all the time or being around people. God bless my friends and loved ones. But, I'm not always in a rush. Like, I do value my moments alone. But for some reason, society doesn't see it as a joy. Instead, it sees it as something to be pitied. But like Emerson, I want to guard my spare moments. I mean, what are your thoughts on this, Rebekah? Why is it that society frowns on those who choose to enjoy those moments alone? And why is solitude seen as such a negative thing?
So I think there's a couple things going on here. One is this is a very Western cultural norm to bifurcate to black and white, to, either or. So when you look at something like solitude, it comes down to, solitude, being alone, bad, relationship, good. And then you look at, other concepts around that and what we do to people in terms of looking at this kind of either or scenario. And so part of it, I think, is that for some reason, as a culture, we've decided that this kind of falls into that category of something that you don't want to do, as opposed to this kind of fluid spectrum idea that you really need both. You need yin and yang in order to live a, fulfilling, manageable life. I also think that it's just really difficult in the current environment to get rid of the noise. You think about, particularly now, many people live in cities. And so how difficult is it to, unless you're like hiding in the closet or the bathroom, for 30 minutes a day, it's like, how simple and accessible is it to really get that time by yourself? And what Emerson was talking about, frankly, was this modern idea of boundaries. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It's, your guarding your spare moments, in essence, is him saying, find those boundaries and make sure that you define what those are. And, we've just kind of, I think in a way, we live in this boundaryless, there's phones and things dinging all the time and people can get to us at any point in the day. So you really have to be vigilant about setting those things up and doing what's best for you personally.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that sentiment more. I do think it's a modern take on boundaries. Again, it's just fascinating that words written, so many years ago can be so present and current today. But Rebekah, I mean, I want readers to know more about your story and what inspired you to write Champagne for One, because I found it fascinating. And I think my favorite, I mean, I have many favorite nuggets in this book, but I love Champagne for One. I love the story surrounding that. I think the illustrations also do a fabulous job at telling the story. But I want them to hear from you. Tell us about your inspiration, what happened, and what made you decide to put pen to paper and share these stories with us?
So the genesis of this, which I haven't actually talked about publicly, really, I've, kind of privately with different editors and people at the Collective Book Studio. But what happened was in August 2017, I had just moved to Nashville a few months before that. And one of my best friends from growing up passed away really suddenly in August 2017. And so it was a very unfortunately tragic death. And it kind of threw me, and she lived here in Nashville. So it just threw me into this dark place of grief. And a month later, our birthdays are about a week apart. So our intention was to go to this spa here in Nashville. So I ended up there alone, obviously, because Katie was no longer with us. And I was sitting at the spa, and there was an empty chair next to me. And the attendant came up and said, "Would you like a glass of champagne before your massage?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love one." And she pointed to the chair next to me and she said, "Would your friend like one as well?" And I just, I was like, okay, she's not here, but she's here. I can do this. And it's not like I wasn't used to being alone. I mean, I was single at the time. I spent a lot of time by myself. But this particular thing was like, I knew that she would have wanted me to just celebrate and embrace fully what was going on. So downed my champagne, went to get a massage. And during that, hour long, this poem, which is the signature poem in the book, came to me like just in about 5 seconds. It just all was just there. I kind of saw it. And so I went back into the lounge and wrote it down on my phone, or, took it down on my phone notes. And so that was the spark. And that was in September 2017. And then over the course of the next year, I, of course, met the man I'm now married to. And that's book number 2. Champagne for 2. But so that was a lot of writing around this concept of solitude, because I was really pretty much alone in a new city. And I knew people, but I ended up, moving to the board of the tech company I had founded in San Francisco. I just needed the time, And so then I decided, I've been writing, of course, for years, but I thought I'm just going to really try to focus on this full time. So that's the genesis of the poem Champagne for One. But then what started happening was this concept of, wow, people really don't know how to be alone, and they don't understand like why someone would want to be alone and be okay with it. And I think it's something I'd really struggled with a lot of my adult life, because I was single and didn't get married till I was 40. And for the most part, I was, pretty okay with it. It was other people that made me feel bad. I talk about this in the book. It's like around age 33 or so, if you're not married, people start asking you if you're going to freeze your eggs. It's like, why are you talking about my eggs right now? It's not really, how is that your business? So, again, trying to make light of things that could otherwise be hurtful or just kind of like odd and awkward, that people really are wondering what's wrong with you, or like why you don't want to be married. It's like, that wasn't what I wanted. It just ended up being the way it was. So that's the background.
Well, I'm happy to hear you share the story. I mean, reading the book, it was just fascinating to me. I think that we always assume that, someone's terribly lonely if they're alone. Or in the case of being at the spa, there's no way you could have gone there alone.
Right,
So your friend had to be there with you. I think the other bit of the book that kind of hit home to me a bit more personally, though, was Ladies Who Lunch.
Yes, that's one of my favorite. I think that's actually my favorite story, it's a satire piece, but I have to say, I'm glad you said that, because I wanted to talk about that.
Yes.
Too.
That one, Ladies Who Lunch, is my personal favorite. I love Champagne for One. I think it's great. It was just, but the one that hit home for me was Ladies Who Lunch, because the town I'm currently living in, I remember moving, and the funny part is I wasn't single. I'm not single. I was married. However, my husband travels a lot for work, or at least, back then he did. So I would go down to the boardwalk, I'd be walking around alone. They had a local women's group. I would go, but of course I'd attend events alone because again, my husband travels. But I was comfortable being alone because I know how to be alone. I was alone before. Obviously I got married. He travels, so of course I had to learn how to be alone, even if, that wasn't a thing. But for some reason, Rebekah, these women pitied me. It felt like a pity party. Like, we want you to hang out or come do this or let's have lunch. And granted, I had lunch with them a few times, I will admit, but I was just so happy. So it's like explaining, oh no, I'm fine. I enjoy going down here. I've been invited to lunch. I've been invited to tea. I've been invited to all sorts of things. But sometimes I enjoy being alone. And so Ladies Who Lunch really struck a chord with me. And I really want to hear your take on it as well.
Well, in fairness, we do kind of live in this, again, some of this is just these social norms where people are getting beat over the head with this idea of inclusion, which this is a great thing, by the way, let's be clear. But it's like sometimes it's like, I don't really want to be included with you. I just don't, it's not always about being included. Sometimes you don't care to be. And I think the point of that piece was, and obviously it's over the top. And, I've been to many a lunch as you have with lovely people, but I think it's getting at this idea, this assumption that if you're walking alone with your coffee and you prefer not to take the invitation, then it's almost like an insult, or there is something like some people just can't imagine that you wouldn't want to be included in their group. And so part of that, with my writing, I do try to talk about topics in a light way, but on the deeper level of that is, being in groups and having tribes can be a really positive thing. It can also be really detrimental to your own self-actualization and agency. And so it's kind of this concept of the boundaries and saying, your people are not my people. And I appreciate what you're trying to offer me, but I'm not interested. And I have the freedom to say, no, thank you. And so that's really kind of the deeper part of that, done in a kind of lighthearted, funny way. And I'm with you. It's like I started moving around really the world by myself at 18 and would land in these cities and be by myself, really not knowing anyone. And so you're kind of just become okay with it because of, you're trying to survive. And then you start to think, oh, this is really great. Like I can go to the movies by myself and go eat dinner by myself and not be bothered and be in my own thoughts. The other thing I was going to say before, and I think I got distracted by just because of the other things we were talking about, but I do think that there's this other modern culture thing. People love to take these tests like, oh, I'm an extrovert, an introvert. Oh, I'm an 8 or a 9 or a 1 on the Enneagram, and all those things are great. Those things are fine. And I'm not saying don't do it. It's a waste of time. But why do we put ourselves in these boxes? So saying, well, I'm an extrovert, so therefore I need to be around people all the time. Or, oh, I'm an introvert. So then you're not like, we're all kind of all of it. So I think that there's this temptation to say, oh, well, that person then must be an introvert and they must not like people and they must just sit at home all day with their cats, reading books and being antisocial. Whereas it's just kind of like, no, I just don't want to hang out with you. So, and that's hard for people to accept, to be like, oh, how could that be that, so we say, oh, well, it's just because she's this or he's that. And it's like, really? Like people are just people. We're just kind of all trying to, make the best way for ourselves. And I think I personally believe that most people are just, trying to be loving and kind and be a good member of society. And, but it's really easy to say, oh, well, then they must have this kind of problem or they must do that. And, we tend to pathologize people a little bit for whatever reason.
Yes. See, for me, solitude is like a part of my ritual to just keep me going. I journal. I actually value the quiet moments alone in the morning before everyone's up. And it's just me. It's my thoughts. It's a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, whatever I'm having. what I also love about the book is that there's just so many witty bits in there as well. I mean, Prayer for Solitude, I'm here for it. You know.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed the book. I'm glad you read it too. I think sometimes I'm doing these interviews and I'm like, did they even read the book? But I appreciate that you did your homework.
I did, but I loved it. I genuinely did. I love the silent toast, you know, celebrating those little wins and just even the conversation enders. You know, it was just a great way. I love the FAQs. I thought that was just also witty as well. How do you
should we have you read an excerpt so that
should.
People, do you want to read? I think a good one would be the recipe for stag stew. Do you? I have the book here too.
Yes.
But another thing, it's so funny as you're looking for the story. What's so funny is you're talking and you're like, I'm thinking, oh, she's exactly like me. We should hang out. And I'm like, no, because then we wouldn't be alone. And then, so it's like, I find all these people that are very much like me, but then it's like, but wait, if we hung out, it would be the opposite of what we're trying to do.
No, let me tell you, this is a really cool way. I met a book friend online and I said to her, one day we're going to get together. She's in the UK. And I'm like, whenever I make it back over, we're going to get together and you're going to be in your corner. I'm going to be in mine and we're going to be reading or just doing our own thing.
Yes.
But enjoying our solitude together.
I mean, that's how my husband and I kind of live. I mean, I think he talks to me once a week on Fridays between 3 and 4. He'll get it all out. And then it's just like silence. The rest of the week, I'm like, I met the perfect man. He cooks for me. He's totally quiet. And then he says all he needs to say. And he's like, I'm done. And then he just walks away.
I think the main difference is we can be social. Because in my head, we could totally hang out. But here's the thing. When we don't want to hang out, it's okay. Like, we understand that. Like, oh, no, now's not a good time. Or, I just don't want to hang out. I need some alone time. And it's not like this great offense, similar to the ladies who lunch. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you guys, it's Recipe for Stag Stew. And the long and short of this is that at the end, if you follow the recipe, you'll love your alone time. Okay. So this is a recipe. You need 4 ounces of confidence. You need 6 ounces of letting that shit go. Because I think we all should do that. You need 3/4 cup embracing personal freedom. Another 3/4 cup of not caring about other people's opinions. Now, this is my favorite part. 1 cup of good humor. 1.5 cups of books, magazines, and shows you love. And then 1 gallon of your favorite fizzy beverage. And that, my friends, is a perfect recipe for a stag stew. And I think if you have all these ingredients, or even just a couple, I think you'll enjoy your alone time a lot more than you think.
Bravo. That was an excellent read.
I love the recipe. I really love that recipe, especially those last 3 ingredients. The humor, the books, and sometimes movies and TV shows, and binge whatever you love. And then, of course, you need some beverages, I mean,
I've overdone it on the gallon thing, but, in retrospect. But, it's like, c'est la vie.
C'est la vie. I'm here for it. But Rebekah, I want to know a bit more about you and your reading life, because yes, in the Stag Stew, we should be reading some books. So I want you to share with our listeners some books that you finished reading recently that you would now recommend.
So the book I finished most recently was Kristen Hanna's The Great Alone. I'm a huge fan of Kristen Hanna. Pretty much everything she writes is great. And I'm one of these people who's kind of always reading multiple books. So I'm rereading Traveling Mercies by Anne Lamott. I just finished Clementine. It's a historical nonfiction about Churchill's wife. I don't remember the author. It's a very in-depth read. It also, the way that she develops these characters, it's almost like you're reading satire, but it's not. It's just they're so over the top. So I would highly recommend that book. I'm reading What French Women Know. I'm actually reading that for the second time by Deborah Olivier Oliver. One of those. I think I can get it for you in the show notes, but it's great. And then A Supposedly Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again by David Foster Wallace. It's a compilation of his essays. And then I'm reading Cynical Theories, which is more of a political book. But yeah, I mean, it's annoying because I'm usually reading like 4 or 5 books at a time.
Oh no, that's welcome here. But I also love the fact that you reread books that you actually love. I know it's like a big debate in the book community. Should I read it back? But wait, I have so many books I want to read, but I love rereading tried and true favorites.
Well, I also I don't know if you do this, but I like to highlight stuff and take notes. So then when I go back and read it, it's so interesting to see what at the time was resonating, and like if it still is where I'm at personally. And, I just find it kind of fun to do that.
Yep, absolutely. Same here. We're also big fans on the podcast of local indie bookstores. So I'd love for you to share with our listeners some of your favorite bookstores.
Well, I live in Nashville, so Parnassus Books is certainly on the top of my list. And I know many people have heard of that because it's co-owned by Ann Patchett, who's obviously an amazing writer and has written many great best-selling books. When I lived in Sausalito, California, which was like 2011 to 2017, there was a great bookstore in Mill Valley called the Depot Bookstore and Cafe, which is just so cute and quaint. I used to spend many a weekend there. And then, it's like everywhere. It's funny, I don't have a list in front of me, but I really do try to, every time I go to a city, I try to find the independent bookstore where I'm at. So it's kind of like one of those things where some people will go to find the local pub, and I'm always going to the local indie bookstore to try to pick some stuff up and support local.
Absolutely. And same here. I always try and find the bookstore. I kind of think that's my North Star. Yeah, I just have to find the bookstore and see what they have on their shelves. Okay, so bringing it back to Champagne for one and just kind of tying things together, Rebekah. I mean, I know you've done your job. You've written the book. You've beautifully packaged it for us, of course, with the help of your publisher and illustrator. But I mean,
they get all the credit for that. I don't take any credit for the design. Designer David did a great job, and Holly and Angela and Amy and everyone over there. I really only take credit for the writing, truly.
Well, I think it's a great team effort, so kudos to everyone who's made this book happen. I think it's just a great book for everyone to have. I also think it's a great gift item. It's something you can gift all year round. But more than anything, what are you hoping readers will maybe take away? What are some of the reactions you're probably hoping for? Or just some thoughts or conversations you're hoping Champagne for One will start?
That's a great question, and one that does get posed a lot. And for me, it's just kind of a permission slip to say, hey, I'm going to take a beat and I'm going to tap out for a minute and just enjoy my alone time and have that, have that as part of your daily routine. And I think sometimes, I don't know if this is I think it tends to be more of a female thing, but like you need permission to do stuff that doesn't involve other people because there's a lot of guilt. Like I'm supposed to be doing something right now to help someone else or to caretake. So, I do hope it's that, just kind of a reminder, like, oh yeah, this can be like, this is totally mine to own. And, I do want people to laugh and have joy. I think we've been particularly now, we're in a bit of a dark period where everything has seemed so serious, and it is serious to a degree, but I'm hoping that people gather in this way around this topic and can have some laughs and some enjoyment and some, so that it brings joy. And then also broaches this topic and makes people maybe not feel so bad about being alone. I think, there's a couple different audiences here. First is the single person that's going like, am I weird for being alone, or what's wrong with me? So this is, in a way, this is saying, no, there's nothing wrong with you and you can fully own it. And on the other side, for those of us that are in relationships or have children or a lot of family demands, it's, it's kind of a prompt to remind them, oh yeah, I can, I need to take this time for myself. So yeah, I mean, I really hope people just have fun with it. And it is really, I mean, the brilliance of the design, which again, I don't take credit for, it's really pretty and it looks great on coffee tables or like a bar cart, and, paired with, wine or like a champagne flute, a candle, and bubble bath could be a great gift for, anyone, any really female for the most part, I think, in your life. But yeah, so that part to me is what's so fun about it, is it's pretty. And it's like, oh, this is a fun gift to give. So that gives it a little extra oomph, I think.
I agree. Thank you so much, Rebekah, for coming on the show and speaking with me. It was such a pleasure.
And thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in to The Reader's Couch. You can find out more about the show and submit your questions for our guest by visiting our website, thereaderscouch.com. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Couch is Booked. If you like the show, please subscribe, share, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Next week, I'll be back with new guests, more books, and some fun games we can play. But until then, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks for listening, and happy reading.